College football fans, welcome back to the College Ball Show. I'm Chris, he's Marshall, and we're here to discuss everything going on in the world of college football, especially what's going on the field. Obviously, not a whole lot going on the field any longer, right? With the season being done, we're fresh into 2020, and the national championship is over. Clemson gave a good fight, especially early on. But LSU was just too much for them. They ended up winning 42-25. We planned on doing a post-game show the night of, but life got in the way. I had a friend in need, and I had to help her out. So, like I said, life tends to just get in the way out of nowhere. And so we are kind of back a couple days later. We're not going to go crazy into depth because, like I said, we realize that the national championship is over. But we're going to talk a little bit about the game. And we're also going to remind you the last part of the show will be like a real quick little college basketball segment. We'll just talk real vaguely about it. And the reason why I'm saying that right now at the beginning of the show is because we call it the College Ball Show. And that is because, we start with college football late August all the way until mid-January. Then we switch to college basketball, hence the College Ball Show. So we take that all the way till April in the national championship. And we figure, there's a lot of people, especially when March Madness comes around, the NCAA tournament. We figure the people that'll be focused in on college ball then probably, a good percentage of you, if not all, will watch the NBA playoffs. So then we go into our NBA playoff banter podcast show as well. We take that all the way through the finals, right? All the way to the draft, all the way to free agency. And the way it goes now in the NBA, sometimes that's mid-July. We still are doing shows. So stay with us all the way through the college ball season and also the NBA playoffs, draft, and free agency. Anyway, we are going to get into some of this real quick as far as breaking down this game. LSU, got it done. They 15-0. They finished really, really strong season. Really makes up for the rough 2011 national championship game where LSU, went against Alabama in the regular season 9-6. I think that was an overtime game too, but it was 9-6. And you think, okay, they got over the hump. I think they went against seven ranked teams that year, which was a big deal at that time. That was one of the best resumes we had seen. And sure enough, one matching two, Alabama got their revenge and beat them 21-0. So that I always felt bad for LSU having to face Bama again. It sounds funny to say that now because that predicament can happen here with the semifinals, obviously, but it's just less of a chance of that happening. And no one really had done that too many times where you face a team. Once you face a team, in the actual regular season or, even the conference title games, you generally are not going to face them again because of the bowl alignments and because if you're in the national championship, odds are you're not there. But we've seen it. We've seen it with like Florida State. We've seen that a couple of times where they face off in the regular season, meet in the national championship. But it just sucked for them because they had such a fun, great year that year. And I was really rooting for them. And so it was nice to see them on the other side of that. But real quick, if this is your first time listening to the College Ball Show, it streams live and archives right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. Like I said, it streams live, but it also archives. It's basically the headquarters. However, if you want to listen to the College Ball Show outside of Blog Talk, you can find it under the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, really a wide variety of places, a lot of different platforms, including the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which can be found everywhere, including iHeartRadio. Both platforms can be, and if you use your Siri or Alexa through Spotify or TuneIn, you can find it as well. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to the gruelingtruth.net. It's football, it's basketball, it's baseball, it's boxing, it's everything in between. They got a great sponsor over there, betnow.eu, with the promo code TGT. And one last thing, if you're thinking about cutting the cord, or maybe you have and you're just not quite happy with what you have, you want some sort of cable package, I got the thing for you. I actually use it myself. It's called AT&T TV Now. Okay, it's a streaming cable service. It has a 7-day free trial, so you can just try it for a week. The plans start as low as $50 a month. There's no annual contract to tie you down. You can stream it anywhere. They do have the cloud DVR for a sports fan or whatever. That comes, in handy. And it's available across the country in limited areas at this point. It's definitely here in Minneapolis. It's in parts of Texas, California, Florida, New York, other parts of the Midwest like Wichita, Topeka, St. Louis, in Missouri. Also in the Northwest, Seattle, Tacoma. It's a growing network. You can actually go to the website and put your area code in and see if it's available in your area. It's called AT&T TV Now. That's live streaming cable. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host. And for the record, it has been a while since we did this show because it's, usually we do it Monday, but it was last Monday, right? And my co-host basically got the score right. 42-28 is what he called it. And I remember saying like 38-34, 38-31, 34-31. I was all over the place when it came to there was going to be some field goals in there. And I remember when he said 42-28, I said, wow, so it's all touchdowns for you. And he was basically right. 42-25. LSU gets the job done. It took a little while, though, which, you got a little time off between the last games. And you are dealing with the top two, teams in the country. So it did take a little while. Clemson actually, scored first. They got all the way up 17-7. And there was 4 punts out of LSU, and three of them were 3-and-outs, and the other one was a 5-play drive and a 4-play drive. So early on, Clemson did a damn good job, and they were up 17-7, and then they weren't. You know what I mean? It kind of got out of control a little bit. There was 28-17 at half, and they just kind of took it away. First and foremost, going to bring in my co-host and see what's up with him, see how he's doing, and just give his thoughts in general while you're watching the game. In those early quarter and a half, when the Clemson defense was definitely, right there with them.
Yeah, it was. And overall, Chris, I'm doing good. I had a little bit of a flashback of how strong sangrias can be. I had a buddy in town. I had a good buddy who came down to visit me for the weekend for football, whatever. And we went out and we were having some good drinks all day and went out to dinner. And that sangria, man, that stuff goes down like candy. I love that stuff. But when you've been having drinks all day and then you start pounding sangria, I was a little bit of a buzz. So I was living some college flashbacks. I don't think I made a fool out of myself. I think the waitress knew I was having a good time, but I didn't do anything too stupid or dumb. But
in the summer, that stuff's even worse, dude, because you're like, oh, man, it's hot out. I'm going to drink more of it,
Yeah, so a shout out to whoever made sangria, back in the day, the grapes and everything. Good for you. I appreciate it. But that was Saturday. I survived. Sunday recovered. And on Monday, I watched football with a buddy I work with. You're right. The first quarter was the Clemson won the field position battle. LSU started a couple of drives in a row inside their 10-yard line. So obviously, as good as their offense is, even them facing a respectable Clemson defense, you can't dial up too much, because you got to look out for the safety. The defense is pretty much giving you anything under. So their offense did come off a little slow because, again, their field possession wasn't key. But as Joe Burrow said in the post game after, he's like, we saw what they were doing. We made an adjustment, and then we were good. And as cocky and simple as that sounds, it probably was really true. Okay. I'm sure everyone loves Clemson's DC and Venable. The guy's a great coach. The announcers adore him. every time like he's one of the best things ever. And he might be a great defensive coordinator, but for that game itself, he was still facing an offense who was better than his defense. Now, I seem to like remember certain teams throughout the years, but my overall memory of specific teams is never that great. I think I have like a good long-term sport knowledge mind, but when you're going to details of teams, I always kind of struggle there. So I can't say this precisely true, but it would be hard for me to recall a much better offense I've ever seen than this one. Okay, I know like USC had their great run with like Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and those guys, and obviously Texas knocked
Oklahoma
them
was
off
big.
with Vince Young.
Oklahoma's defense was big until it met Florida. But that year with what's his toes, he played for the Vikes too in the Rams. Why can't I think of his name?
Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
one that they really, were putting up the stats and all that as far as, until, like I said, it met that Urban Meyer Florida defense.
Yeah. So again, it's hard to look back in the past 20 years, but this is definitely one of the best offenses, top 3 or whatever, in my opinion, that we've seen in a long time. So in the past 20, 25 years of football, because this team went through everyone. If you look back and say, hey, I was a Florida State fan, or I was a so-and-so fan, and look what we did that year. Okay, that's true. But if we're going to compare other teams, just for the fun argument you always have in bars that no one ever wins, a majority of teams who would be put on the top offensive list probably didn't beat like 4 or 5 top 10 teams. I mean, they showed out over and over again against elite like schedule coverage. I mean, I think
most of them didn't play in the SEC either.
Yeah,
think about it. They didn't come
exactly.
from the SEC.
So the school, I mean, it just goes to show how damn good offense, or how damn good that offense was. It could be one of the best of all time. Definitely one of the best in my lifetime, just because they were pretty much putting up over 40 points a game with a pretty hard schedule. As hard as you can make them. LSU, Auburn, and A&M probably all had the hardest schedules in the country. And LSU also did that and won the SEC title, and they won 2 games in the college playoff footballs. Weren't even close, especially with Oklahoma. So hats off to them, man. Whatever adjustments they made, they were working. And for that wide receiver Chase, I remember looking at my buddy. I'm like,
yeah,
the dude has 6 catches, 152 yards, and we're halfway through the game. Like,
exactly.
What? And shout out to our boy Randy Moss. Man, I was so happy seeing that guy. I've always loved Randy, as you have too. He's just a great guy for football. He's in the Hall of Fame. Like, if you're a Vikings fan, you got a special place in your heart for Moss. He's going out there in his LSU gear cheering on his son, who had a couple of big plays and touchdowns too. So that LSU offense came out to play. And the knock that we had at the start of the year of LSU's defense ain't that good, because they'd had a tough appearance against Texas, who at that time's offense was healthy. And they had a pretty rough first half against Florida.
Yeah.
After the Florida game, Chris, LSU's off defense didn't really have a bad game. They were by no means great. This was not the DBU, even though the DBs came to play that Monday night. Like, this wasn't a great defense, but they progressed throughout the whole year. And with as good as their offense was, as long as you didn't massively F up, Joe Burrow was going to score enough points to where you literally could kind of sit back on your heels and just attack. Like, there's something to be said for when you're playing a defensive football game, when you're on defense and your offense has a 20-point lead, you kind of know, hey, they're not going to run the ball against us. With having a comfortable lead in offense, it does make your defensive life easier. Okay, guys, we got a 20-point lead. We're in the third quarter. They're not going to be running the ball much. Let's organize plays to benefit our secondary. So I've had my little rant window there of the openings, but shout out to LSU, hell of an offensive team. And the defense probably played, I would say, better than some people thought, Chris. That defense played pretty damn good for LSU a couple nights ago.
Yeah, and they did down the stretch, like you mentioned. They got into that shootout with Bama, but other than that, down the stretch, it wasn't really shootouts. And 25 points is, what were they averaging? 40-something, 43, 45? I mean, that's well underneath their average in general. And if you look at it, they played 7 teams that were ranked in the top 10 when they played.
That's what I thought.
7 teams when they ranked in the top 10 when they played them. So when I'm talking about that year they had 7 ranked teams. That's different. That's even different than that. I'm sure Texas actually got ranked at the end of the year, didn't they? Because of that win, probably. I don't know.
They might have.
Yeah, maybe they did. I know my Gophers are number 10 in the AP. They closed 10. I'll take that. But anyway, back to the game. Yeah, I mean, this is offensively, that's why with Bateman and Johnson, I knew, in the Big Ten and pretty much across the country, we had, the top 2 wide receivers. But I always said, Alabama and LSU were the only teams that had better receiving core. You know what I mean? Just because I think Chase is on a different planet when it comes to all these guys. And so that kind of separated it for me. But offensively speaking, and it's not like Oklahoma earlier in the year that was showing signs of defensive improvement and then didn't. This was the opposite way, you know what I mean? So, yeah, and, they weren't – if you think about – I didn't even think about this, but if you think about how the defense was built for the last decade at LSU, they weren't used to being in shootouts at all,
No,
So maybe that kind of freaked them out. Maybe they're like, why don't we rotate some more bodies? We didn't really think about this. Our offense scores so quick that we're going to have to be on this field a lot longer than we used to. So that could have played into it, and especially when you run the hell out of the ball like they did previously. That, helps your defense too. So that could play into it early, and then they like you said, it didn't matter. They made the adjustments down the stretch. And I did think, like you said, field position was key. One time, though, when LSU did trap them down by the 4-yard line, this is when I thought, okay, wait a second. This could be interesting here now. Wait a second. It was 17-7 after that 4-play, 96-yard drive, and Higgins got the TD. I'm like, wow, dude, that's freaking impressive. Of course, quick strike, back from the LSU offense, made it 17-14, and then chased that long touchdown, 21-17 with 5 minutes left, and they were up all the way. A couple of third down key catches from, like you said, Mr. Moss Jr., I'll call him.
Oh, yeah.
He made a couple great plays, and it really doesn't surprise me that his kid can go up and get it and make a great catch in traffic. That doesn't surprise me for some odd reason because, Daddy did it. Burrow did take a hit, though, on that touchdown. And it looked like, was it his back or rib? There was a little bit of, I wonder if he's going to be okay. I'm sure they just, pumped him full of cortisone and he was just fine. But, yeah, then the second half, I give LSU credit because they did force a punt and get it right to 28-25. And I'm like, all right, dude, Clemson took their shot, threw their punch, landed early, coming back. LSU took it, and went right back at him. And now Clemson's going right back at him. And the way they answered, though, was very, very strong. Not in the next drive, though. It was a 3 and out. So I was like, okay. But then they came down, scored a touchdown. Had a long not a long drive, but they had a scoring drive that ended up missing a field goal. But it didn't really matter because by that time, it was a whole lot of punts for Clemson. And once they got to 45-25, that was a wrap. And if you just stat-wise, this whole season with this offense has been ridiculous. And I'm excited to see two things. One, what's next for LSU offensively? Not just losing a receiver. Jefferson. Is Chase a sophomore? I can't remember if Chase is a sophomore.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that.
I'm going to check really quick, but
okay.
They're losing their coordinator. They are losing their coordinator. And he was only there for a year, right? I think he was only there for a year. He's a sophomore.
Yep.
He's a sophomore. So they're bringing back 2 out of the 3. And it's not like Lawrence didn't play pretty good. They were able to run for a while. I thought, Lawrence did a good job running down the stretch too this year. But it was too little too late. It's not like, the running back got 110 yards, only 16 carries for Clemson. So they ran, and they had some key runs. but 31 of 49, 463, 5 touchdowns, no picks. The numbers just are just nuts. I mean, there's literally like just in that first playoff game against Oklahoma, there was like 9 different offensive, either Burrow or just LSU records. I mean, this was just crazy records. And yes, the it's a different time in college football. We get that, but you're right. I mean, it'd have to be right up there with the best offense, if not the best offense. I just really because they still can run if they need to. So
yeah,
it's not like all those linemen from these last couple of years. They didn't have a bunch of new linemen, and they got recruited to throw the ball 40 times a game. That's definitely not the case here. So, but I am wondering, not so much losing Burrow. That may sound crazy, but the people that know Burrow this year didn't know him last year, I guess. So that's why I think this coordinator has been really, really big. I give a lot of credit to Burrow for improving as a quarterback, no doubt about it, obviously, but there's got to be something to the system too, because he would have had a much better year last year if that was the case. But I really want to see who they hire now because their coordinator's gone already, and he just got there. So, and he was a younger guy, and I don't know. I really want to see where they're going to go. But as far as some people are calling it the best team ever, maybe it could be. You never know. I don't know about all that stuff. That's a tough debate. My thing is the way I decide this stuff, you can look at domination within the year. You can look at the opponents they went against. You can look at the opponent's defense they went against. There's so many ways to break this down, right? You can look at, in this era, would that work? Would this work? You can't really line it up like that, I don't think, because it's different eras. You're doing different stuff. But my thing is pros. Let's see these players in the pros and see how many guys go to the Hall of Fame, see how many guys get into Pro Bowls, see how many guys are all-pro type guys. To me, that's really the only way you can dispute this stuff because, as we know, Marshall, they're not going to ever play on the field. So my guess is if you had a couple of Hall of Famers on your team, several Pro Bowlers, several guys that made it in the league for 8 to 10 years, my guess is I rate that team higher than the other way. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's the best way to break it down because anything can happen in one game, but it kind of defeats the purpose because it's never going to be played. So you just got to look at who had the best players. And that's where that 2001 Hurricane team is a tough bunch to compete with. But I'm obviously biased, but I'm biased towards stats and numbers. That's one thing, and obviously fandom. But I see what that squad did in the pros. Some of those guys are going to the Hall of Fame. And so, that's – I don't really care. I just know from my eye, the eye test, they are one of the best ever teams that I've seen.
Yeah, they are. They put together an offense that led to the quarterback with, I believe, finished with the most accurate season percentage throwing a football all year. And also he set the record for the most touchdown passes in a whole season. So if you got the most accurate throwing quarterback for passing percentage and the most touchdown passes ever in college football history, like, okay, that wasn't a fluke. There's games where some guys have fluke games. You don't do a fluke season of offensive stats. Oh man,
Right.
Go figure. We had a little bit of a breakdown on targeting because I said that's become more of a, I would say, referee focused agenda. And of course, Clemson, unfortunately for them, they lose one of their best linebackers. I'm not saying that LSU doesn't win, but and the call was correct.
It's definitely worth a mention.
It was 100% correct call. Again, if we're going to focus on targeting and the refs make the right call, I will continue to applaud it because I'm all for the safety. But he dipped his head, he lowered his shoulder. Even if he didn't have complete head-on-head contact, he hit the side of the shoulder, hit the helmet. Complete right call, he gets tossed out the game. that did them no favors. Not that the defense had been lights out, but again, when you lose one of your key figures of your defense, you normally don't replace linebackers. Okay, in football, you probably have an okay safety, an okay secondary, but for the most part, in my opinion, when you're losing guys in the middle of the field, which normally in general don't seem to have as much depth, like your backup cornerbacks normally better than your backup linebackers. So you lose him, that didn't help them at all. And again, it was the right call. Completely agree. The reviewing was good, but Ohio State lost a tough player against Clemson. Now, unfortunately, this time Clemson lost to one due to targeting. And again, Chris, I'm happy with it. The decisions are good, and I expect more calls of that sort of be made next year as the emphasis grows. We don't really need to talk about that now. I just thought it was kind of interesting for the game to have a big player get thrown out due to us talking about the show prior.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I definitely had it on my mention it stuff, and I was going to actually mention it while I was breaking down the game. I'm glad that you remembered that, no doubt about it. So, all in all, it was a damn good season. All in all, we made it another year with the format that we have that was correct. We keep hearing about. That's the thing about this whole. How can you want a eight man that would be weird. An 18 playoff system when you don't want extra shitty bowls. You see what I'm saying? Like, well, hold on now. You can't have it both ways. You can't complain about having probably 15 more bowls than you need. Well, why do we need to fucking have these 8 teams in there then? That if you want to say money grab, well, of course those bowls, those extra 15 bowls we don't need, those are money grabs. But a top 8 making it would clearly be a money grab, and it would screw over the fan base. So I think it's ridiculous. Yes, on this show we're accepting 5 and 6, a 5th and a 6th team. I think 5th would be great, but 6 would really solve it. Any kind of question people had. You know what I mean? And that's just how it goes. Because you have the Power 5 covered, and then you either have that Central Florida, or you have a team coming from the SEC or Big Ten probably getting in there. So you kind of have that all figured out that way, in my opinion. We did have the TCU scenario, and I understand that, and that's why I'm willing to go 5 or 6. But when you look at what we have right now, Marshall, and you go back and look at the games and how many blowouts we've had just in the semifinals, dude. Now, have we had some overtime great games? Oklahoma, Georgia, like we've had some great games. I'm not saying that. My point is to hit home. We don't need 7 and 8, because if we're having blowouts against 2 and 3 and 1 and 4 at times, which we have. Clemson got blown out by Bama a couple years ago. Ohio State got blown out. Florida State in the first year got blown out. Oklahoma got blown out. We've had blowouts, dude. That's just bottom line. One of the games generally is a blowout. We're talking top 4. So do you want to add these other blowouts? Isn't that a money grab, just like those extra 15 bowl games? I'm really settled in. I love the format right now, but also, like I said, I only want to go 5 or 6, but here it is, another year where we're satisfied. We know who's the number 1 team.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that if you make it, I don't know, see how you. I think 7's kind of pointless. Obviously, I don't think that would lay out that well. 5, you get the first team a bye, but I think 7 or 8, you're kind of losing the credibility that you always talk about of how great the regular season is. Like, I think this year they made the right call, and it wasn't quite as close of a draw as normal, but the decision was made, and like those 4 teams earned it, and there was no really debate about that. I think when you get into 8 teams, because you can't, I think 7's pointless. 8 teams, now you're really given 2 teams for sure, probably 3, that probably don't deserve to be playing for the national title. Because if you let in 8 teams, there's no way in hell no 8 teams are ever going to all be undefeated. Like, statistically, that doesn't work out because you're not going to have any lower Power 5 teams making it. So it's going to cheapen a great regular season, because you're going to be arguing over a bunch of teams that probably have 2 losses, or a bunch of 3 teams probably from the same conference. And we've had issues before of debating, okay, who won their bowl game, who made their conference title, who didn't. I think that if you go to 8, which would be for the money, I think the discussions and the format of how they're going to choose is really going to become more difficult, because you're going to have a year where it's going to be Bama, LSU, Georgia,
Right.
and then Michigan, Ohio State, and then Clemson, and then Oregon and USC or something. Well, shit, I apologize, USC ain't making it anytime soon, but they're hopeless. But then you're really opening up the debate of what qualifies as a team that should be in it. This year basically it was like, okay, did you win your conference title? Okay, and if not, how good of a damn regular season did you have? And for this year, all that played out. So yeah, I think if you had more, that's just I could see him doing it, because it's all about money in the ads. But for the sport itself, I'm with you, Chris. This is a perfect setup right now. Everything's off, just everything's in rhythm. I hope they don't change it and get greedy. Yes, and also if you go 8, the one's going to play the 8 seed. Like, dude, that ain't going to be a game. Like, as we found out, there normally is there's like the top teams and everyone else, down a little bit. I don't think the 1 through 8 is going to be that intriguing. I guess if you do that.
Yeah, people are talking 16. It's like, dude, what is you want to see some shitty September games?
Yeah.
Even going to 8 is because if you can get in on 8, you're not going to schedule non-conference tough games.
No.
Why would you?
Yeah, then you're really, for the people that always bitch, oh, Bama doesn't play anyone, Clemson doesn't play anyone. Well, if you go to 8, they're sure as hell not going to play anyone.
There'd be no reason to.
And, then at that point, okay, if you're Bama or Clemson, okay, you schedule 3 cupcakes, lose 1 game in your conference or district, whatever, and then you're in. Like, yeah. But anyways, I don't think that's obviously changing anytime soon. I'm sure there's going to be some knuckleheads on ESPN saying we got to go to a bigger number.
Right.
Again, if they do 5, I would be good with 5, because 5 just gives the number 1 team who's earned it a bye.
Mm-hmm.
But the only other issue I have is if we're going to add numbers, you got to mix these bowl games in a little bit quicker, because we talked about how this year there was a 13-day break.
Yeah.
That 12-day break, that's ridiculous. Okay, normally the bowl game we just saw is the first weekend of January. It was the second weekend following the second weekend of January. That's stupid. Yeah, these guys play a hell of a regular season. It pretty much wraps up in November. You have your conference championship game, and then there's a bunch of bowl games. But the extra week off was dumb. And if you go to 6, or if you go to the evil number of 8, now you're really going to have to bumping things back, because it would make no sense to add teams into a playoff picture, but then maybe give, okay, let's play on a Monday, play on a Saturday. Like,
right.
You got to reward the teams with some rest time. So yeah, I just don't see how that would work at all. Unfortunately, I mean,
maybe that 1 game for the 4th and 5th seed the next week after the season's over. I'm sure those 2 programs wouldn't mind. You know what I mean?
No.
I think they'd be okay. And I understand with the FCS, and they say, well, there's 16 and they're still playing. And yeah, I hear that, but it's different, dude. It's a different ball game. It's just different, dude. A lot of the stadiums are different. It's a lot of taxing, dude, on the fan base already. And they should be at home. Whoever's the higher seed should be at home. Fans shouldn't have to pay for another game to go see their team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, I do know that Trevor Lawrence is coming back again. So unless there is a Clemson corruption, Dabo Swinney gets fired, half the team leaves.
Right.
They're going to be back in the playoffs again. Like, you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Maybe he didn't have his high class, flashiest game against Ohio State, and he didn't play awful against LSU. He just played against a better team. Clemson's going to be in the Final Four again next year, and I'd probably bet a lot of poker chips that good old Nick Saban's probably going to want to be back in that again. So yeah, I think overall, Chris, that was a fun season. We had a successful crappy pick of the week. So I know we're over 600% on the picks. We actually had a pretty good gambling season overall. Yep. But what a overall just pretty much fun season. There wasn't any stupid storylines, no drama, no corrupt schools. I remember. And I guess just for a little bit of news to wrap kind of this up, Matt Rule from Baylor. We talked about him quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
He's going to the big leagues, and he's going to Carolina. I know my buddy was kind of wondering, why do you like the guy so much? And it's like, you got to look at him. He came into a Baylor team whose program had been in the shit just because of everything situation. That just negative publicity. You had the program before you was, sliding under the rug about sexual allegations, apparently, and just the football team was corrupt and the coach was not really taking the blame for it. Everyone gets fired. And it's hard to recruit then because now you're
scholarships lost.
Yeah, scholarships lost. You probably lost a lot of talented kids who were going to come play for you. And now you have a new coach who doesn't really know anyone, had to clean out the whole staff. His first year, they go 1-11. This year, they're one of the top 10 teams in football. So if you can flip around to college in 3 years, I'm not saying the NFL is the exact same ball game, but there's clearly something he does where kids buy in because he also had a very good record at Temple. And Temple's not a football powerhouse by any means, Chris. So I hope he does well. He actually got a really fat contract. I think he got a 7-year deal in Carolina. He's got a couple of toys to play with up there for talented players. But unfortunately, Luke Kuechly retired. But you got McCaffrey and probably Camp. He's healthy again. So happy for him. And besides that, I think that was the only college news we've had of late because all the other coaches kind of moved around. But yeah, so Matt Rule, hey, dude, you left Baylor in a good spot. Hopefully whoever comes in there next can keep that program going the right way.
And I know that you wanted the USC guy fired this year, and I understand that. I, in a sense, did want him too, so I could at least just not have another season of, oh, no, Fleck could still go there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so that worries me. So I'm really hoping for like an 11-game, win season next year. I need them to at least hit 11. That would really help me a lot from a PJ Fleck standpoint because I can just see him. I mean, I know he's a Midwest guy. That's great and all. But, he ain't just recruiting in the Midwest. You know what I mean? I'll tell you that for sure. And you put him in Cali? Oh, my God. You get him a tan? Oh, my God. I mean, they got lakes, and they may be man-made lakes, but you can, there's calm parts of the ocean. You can still row and oar and all that shit in the ocean. So, yeah, I mean, you could just, the surfers will have like little oars and shit out there. That'd be funny. But anyway, yeah, so I'm looking at a couple of programs that wouldn't mind the $10 million thing, you know what I mean? Because that goes until the end of next year, which pretty much covers you. Sure. Because, we all know that, if someone's going to move, they generally move before the new year, unless you are in the semifinals. And shit, if the Gophers could, I don't think they will, okay? But if they were to get to the semifinals next year, okay, Fleck, hey, man, thank you. You know what I mean? I'll take that. Like, if he gives us 4 years and a trip to the semifinals, I mean, hey, man, have fun at USC, buddy. I appreciate you getting us here. Then I'm okay with it. But but because, at least now the University of Minnesota, which was already making money on their athletics, now know they got to put up some money in football and basketball to get a head coach. Wow, that's kind of a weird little formula there. It took them a while, but they got the mathematics right there now. So, but anyway, like I said, a great season, no doubt about it. And like I said at the top of the show, we call it the College Ball Show because we talk college ball. And college ball can mean college basketball. So for those who are into it, that's what's going to be on this show, the College Ball Show, all the way till probably a week into April, something like that. That's usually the national championship. And like I mentioned, then we go after that, a week later or something like that, 10 days later, the NBA playoffs start. So we keep it hoops. We go with our NBA playoff banter podcast that kicks us all the way to the finals, the draft, and free agency. We literally, it's like, mid-July, and we're still doing a show here and there for free agency. As far as college ball, though, this year so far, obviously the non-conference is done besides, probably the Big 12 SEC, matchup challenge or whatever, I'm sure there's some of that. But for the most part, the non-conference is done. And, it's kind of interesting here. You look at Gonzaga and Baylor. They seem to have the stuff going in the right direction as far as consistency right now. You look at some programs like Butler, looks like they're kind of back on their being damn good this year. If you look at the Big East, looks really good this year. The Pac-12 actually has a team in the top 13 as of right now. There is some interesting stuff. You look at Duke and you go, okay, well, they look like a pretty good club. Yeah, they just, got beat. They just got beat by Clemson. So you see Michigan State looking pretty decent for them. They're usually about decent right now. Then they kind of turn it on as the Big Ten goes. They're one of those teams like about probably 8 to 10 that have just crazy schedules. Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, the Blue Bloods tend to have those rough non-conference schedules, so it can make it look worse than it really is. But they just got, soundly beat on the road at Purdue. Right now in the Big Ten, you can't win on the road. I think only one team has as of right now. But, Dayton is a team that kind of stands out. I've seen them a couple of times, Seton Hall as well. Memphis was a team that probably would be a lot better. We know why, because, they lost a player. So to me, I guess long story short so far with college basketball, it's anyone this year. It's anyone's championship this year right now, dude. I'm seeing a wide variety of, well, that team's pretty solid, but it took an L right there, and it probably shouldn't have. Oh, that team, you know what I mean? So it's wide open sitting at January 15th as of right now.
Yeah, and I know that the trend this year has kind of been the top 1 or 2 seeds losing. Like the top 5 teams, I think, losing to unranked teams this year. Like that number is already surpassed last year. And I think it did like last week. So the top 10 in the coaches poll or in the polls have been switching around a lot this year. I mean, but like you said, that just goes to show that March is going to be fun. We don't have a dominant Michigan State team. We don't have a dominant Carolina team, not a dominant Duke team. Like it is kind of a plethora of good teams, but no one that really has been on top. Hell, Baylor's ranked, I think, 2nd right now. Like wins a lot. They're normally consistent, but they're never ranked that high. So maybe we have a team that's truly going to contest Kansas for the whole regular season in the Big 12 instead of just, trying to scare them at the end. So I'm with you, Chris. It seems like a fun year. You got a team like Seton Hall, who's ranked. They got a player named Powell, who's a stud. I've kind of, as I mentioned to you earlier before the show, my Tar Heels are struggling. So I've kind of been enjoying watching Creighton. They're actually ranked this year too. They're a team that just jacks a ton of threes and plays pretty up-tempo basketball. As you mentioned, Dayton, Penn State is actually having a pretty good year. Your Gophers have actually put together a pretty good list of wins so far this year, for being some teams that they weren't supposed to, or they've been having a couple of nice wins at home. So overall, I think it should be a fun year to break down. I don't think we have a Zion or a true standout stud. So I think for once that the conversation for player of the year is going to be a little interesting. I think you have kind of a well-rounded set of teams, well-rounded set of players. Is there someone that's jumped out to you, Chris, that comes off as the best player in the country now that I've maybe missed? Or I know that Cassius Winston from Michigan State, but man, if you watch them play against Purdue,
right,
that was a ball. That was 2 different whole teams and a whole different conversation. So is there anyone that you've maybe heard that's like, hey, look out for this guy or watch him because he's fun? Any names on your sheet kind of early just for top echelon players?
Nah, nothing that stands out as far as that'd be like, hey, oh, wow, I haven't heard of that guy or nothing like that. But that is something that's really interesting. That too, but also what you said about the top tier teams. There's 10th time this season already an unranked team has beaten an AP top 5 poll, and this was a couple weeks ago, so we've already had, I think it's up to 11 now. And don't be number 1, because the number 1 has also changed hands more than it has up until this point at this moment. The Gophers had a really tough non-conference and a tough beginning to this schedule. That's no secret with the Big Ten for some, I guess it's because we cheated way back when and they're still getting us back for it. I don't know, but we always start pretty hectic in the Big Ten schedule. It's always kind of a running joke. But yeah, I mean, there's not, you're right. I don't think there's a Zion per se. I mean, there's a guy at North Carolina that is damn good, but he's not playing right now. So, yeah, I think it's just like I kind of come on the wide open thing, to be honest with you. I can't really come up with a different name at this moment that would be any kind of informal thing for our audience, to be honest with you. The biggest thing is, like I said, it's wide open, and the number ones just keep falling. So that is a great sign, like you said, for March.
By the way, if you want to look into future potential trouble, USC has signed for next year. They have the best player in the country coming there to USC, but his dad is on the staff already. So give it about 2 years, and USC is going to be in trouble again because normally you don't get the best player in the country at USC, especially for basketball. And the dad, right. I mean, and I'm not, I just normally when stuff like this happens.
Yeah, you're not alleging. We're not alleging anything.
No, not at all.
But when you look at the circumstance there,
yeah.
So how did Dad get on the team? I'm not sure. Let's look into that.
So we'll see. Now it'd be pretty cool. I mean, I know USC's actually had a decent list of some guys who've gone pro, like DeMar DeRozan and other. I mean, they're not an awful squad, but I was like, holy shit, USC's got the best player in the country. Oh, the dad's on the staff. I just hope you did all the work clean. I won't mind USC being on the spotlight because they ain't Clay Helton. But I do hope that there's no little scandals going on in the next couple of years after said player is one and done. So, yeah. Well, any other last comments to wrap this baby up as we move on to hoops next week?
Yeah, I mean, there's some hoops going on tonight. There's Saturday. There's several big games. The Duke-Louisville game. There's some interesting Big 12 games on Monday night. So, yeah, we're definitely going to come back with college ball, and we really talk about what happened and what's happening in the week. We preview, predict. We do the whole nine. We look at some, we make some picks throughout the week as well. So yeah, nothing more. But like I said, we're on the college basketball grind now as part of the second part of the college ball show.
All right. Well, I'm going to sprinkle this in and wrap this up. As many bad teams as there are, I'm going to try. We're going to have to do once a week. We're going to have to do a crafty crap pick of the week. We're going to sprinkle it into basketball. And I know there's lots of more choices, but as much fun as we have breaking down crappy football teams playing each other, we can do the same for basketball. Might have to jump a little ahead of time or, might have to pick a day, but there's enough crappy teams I've seen play this year where we're going to do that now for basketball. So if you enjoy the crafty crap pick of the week in football, we're going to do it for hoops now because it's fun. There are quite a few garbage teams I've watched play this year, and why not do it on the hardwood court like we do on the football field? So yeah, look forward to that part too. Besides that, I hope everyone's had a good, safe week. If you're living in places where it's cold, drive safe. There's plenty of idiot drivers in this country, so try to avoid them, please. And look forward to watching college basketball now. In 2 months, March Madness is here. It gives you reasons to skip work and pretend to be sick or, post the surgery you've been needing so you lay on your couch for a couple of weeks. So until next week, the boys are out. Have a great night. Peace.